What's going on, y'all? It's J Smo Reviews here, back at it again with another video, man. Bringing you guys, as stated in my last video, my first piece of end of the year 2024 wrap-up content, and we are starting with the top 5 events of 2024. And I know the convo on this was a bit like had more momentum, was more talked about a week and a half ago. There was debates for event of the year, and I am going to give my pick for event of the year here, of course. But I do want to talk about the 5 best events. You know what I'm saying? What I believe was the best of the best card-wise in 2024. And also, before we get into the list itself, I'm going to quickly, and I mean quickly, go over some of the honorable mentions, because most of these lists, not all of them, but most of these lists I have cooking up are going to have some honorable mentions, because while I do want to name the 5, there is things worth mentioning that are very good, but still not the best of the best, and I feel like are a key that kind of helped us get along in 2024. And as I've stated over and over, this was a good year of battles. Don't let your doomers, don't let your people that are only in battle rap to kind of like make money off hating on battle rap kind of change your mind from realizing, like, quality wise, we had good cards, we had variety and parity across leagues, and we had some like elite years from battlers as well, which is why you've also heard so much about the Cody debate this year and all the elite years we've had. So there's so much to discuss, and I thought events would be the perfect place to start off. And I know that the year isn't technically out, and we have technically 2 more events, right? Outside 3 is passed, but we have Flatline Battle League, whichever one has Jazz the Rapper versus Capo, Official versus Big Ice. I don't think that's going to really make it up here. If it ends up being such a super classic event that it should have made the 5, then I'm just wrong for making the video too early, right? And then we have K-Shine's event, which really doesn't exist as we know it right now. So, like I said, without further ado, we're going to talk quickly on some honorable mentions, and then we're going to get into the big 5. And just to shine some light on the very good, but in my opinion, maybe not flat out great events that we got in 2024. First one is really Black Ice as a whole. They threw 2 events that mattered, but I'm going to pick the Cage, no order, simply because it had some more top tier battles than the first one did, right? Hollow versus A-Ward as the headliner ended up being great in the Cage. Vixen versus 40, which even though a bit one-sided, ended up still being a good look. And they put their talent, like their league talent, in a position versus these top tiers where some of these battles were pretty good. You got your Showstopper versus JC, Rum Nitty versus Killa B, Fonz versus Catboy Hurt, and even if you go to the earlier card in the year with Tay-Rock headlining versus Bankhead, every top tier, like high name value battle rapper that's went there, first of all, the actual Black Ice talent, for the most part, were putting up like respectable efforts, getting around most of the time, but also all the top tiers that went there said only good things about, first of all, the business that Black Ice did, and secondly, how battling in the Cage like kind of motivated them because it was a fun thing to do. And when you can do something that like motivates the battlers just purely on a creative level and just like, oh, this is a dope setting, I want to be fire in it, I think that's great. And I think Black Ice has always been one of the better small leagues that we have in battle rap, been consistent for, it feels like, well over a decade now, have given us some of the best primes like Clean Paper, Arsenal's given some great work over there as well, Bill Collector, Danny, I could go on and on. Big fan of what Black Ice does, and I feel like they had some great contributions this year to battle rap. Also want to talk about the Trenches Anniversary card, which I believe was Trench's best card of the year, and I speak so high in their development. There's so many things that they're doing as a league that I like. The gradual booking, the way that they book the cards, it reminds me of a different time in battle rap, but I thought Trench's Anniversary was, a bigger card for them, maybe the biggest that they put out so far. And even though there wasn't too many like competitive battles, like I guess you could say John and Sirius was kind of competitive. 3 days prep was obviously a bit impactful, but even just the performances here, King winning the tournament over there at the Trenches, had a great performance that night. Av versus Hollow, even though more people have kind of warmed up to Hollow's material after the YouTube drop. Clear win for Av, one of his best performances this year. And then even though Easy and Will was supposed to be a fight, it ended up being one of Easy's best performances ever, and really one of the bigger body bags and losses of Ill Will's career, which just goes to show you don't always have to have tons of, I think competitive battles and the best battles equal for some of the better events, but you could just have a card full of very good one-sided performances, and I still think that adds value to the year. And then this one that some people might not agree with because of there was definitely things done wrong with the production, but I thought Bars Over Politics by URL. Now this is the one where they canceled the stream the day of because of bootleggers, which is stupid. The reasoning didn't really make much sense. Why would you hurt your paying fans because of your non-paying fans? There's just some things I never understood about that, and I believe there was just bad internet in the building. So That's all weird, and I can't be mad at anyone that doesn't want to acknowledge this event because of that. But the raps, which for me is always going to be the most key for events of the year, is the raps themselves. They gave us good battles. Rum Nitty versus Real Sick, good battle. Fonz versus Miss Hustle, good battle. T-Top's performance versus Jerry West was dope. Chef Trez versus Tay-Rock, which I know there's this noise about Trez right now and the whole YouTube drop thing, but gave a dominant performance and a very, that's impactful. You know, Tay-Rock's year has been one of the most talked about, and Trez probably even the clearest loss that he's had this year. And I know I'm forgetting, what is it, Wusan Bad News, a pretty good one-rounder. They just had some good content on there, man. So these are the events that did not make the 5 for me, but I still thought were, very good. I enjoyed. And now we can get to the number 5 spot, starting off the best events of 2024. And to kick off the list, we are going to go to Bullpen and talk about politics as usual, which technically we've already talked about 2 cards here, right, that were sponsored by the mayor. You know, this was the original card that he sponsored, though, before he went to URL and helped with Bars Over Politics. And I thought politics as usual was just really, really solid. And in a condensed event, which I do like this year, I'm not saying that when you have a condensed event, it automatically makes your event better. However, for me, I like 5, max 6 battle events where it feels like everything was pretty efficient. I'm a guy that doesn't like to be around watching battle rap for 7 to 8 hours. I have to do it consistently, like most of us diehard fans out there. But I do have appreciation, especially for one like this, that a battle actually didn't happen. New Jersey Twerk versus Clone didn't end up happening, and it was supposed to. But even with the battles they had, I just thought that the energy was great, and they got good footage out of all of it. And you go to the main event, which one-sided once again, but in my opinion, John's best performance of the year versus Calico. Rock versus Loso, very good battle. T-Top versus Chef Trez was very good, and also one of the performances of the year from T-Top. I believe that's his best performance of 2024 as well. So you get, in my opinion, the best T-Top of the year. You get the best John of the year, and you also get Arsenal versus Bad News, which is one of the best bad newses of the year. And the card did open with Gwitty versus Super Black, so even some extra points, because you had Gwitty on the card, and you still ended up being a good card, right? And plus, you have the judged voting, which I feel like takes this to the next level, where people were winning 5 figures off the floor. John won $50,000 from his judge vote. Tay-Rock winning, I believe it was like $30,000 in his win over Loso, so it was high stakes battle rap, and you got motivated battlers because of that. So for me, paired up in that weekend with Monopoly 2, I thought it was the better of the 2 events, and when I'm looking back at the end of the year, that was like a key checkpoint in the year for me, and why I have it at number 5. And now we move up to number 4, and I feel like number 3 and 4 can be flipped around. I feel like this is for sure the number 3 and 4 events of the year, and I'm sure I'm going to get arguments of why this should be above, but at number 4, I do have Winter Madness. So the most recent of the events, on paper, if we were judging not on the results, but just on paper, it is one of the biggest cards that we got of the year on paper. Mook versus Arsenal, extreme level grudge match, Swamp versus Calico, all the top tier matchups throughout. And I don't think every matchup played up to its full expectation, right? But the important ones did, and that's why for me it's going to end up somewhere in the top 5 no matter what. I mean, Mook and Arsenal, the first round is the only real competitive one. This battle is much more about Mook than it is Arsenal, but it's a Murda Mook masterclass that speaks for itself. Swamp versus Calico, which I got worried about heading closer to the event, ends up being battle of the night and living up to its fullest potential. So you got an incredible Mook performance. You got a decent Arsenal, you know what I'm saying? But that battle as a whole matters. And then you get Cal versus Swamp as the co-main event being like the best version of itself. And then you could tack on things like A-Ward's performance versus J2, very dominant. Marv 1 versus Tay-Rock was a good battle as well. I think Ill Will gets a little overhated for his performance versus Bill, but that battle did have its issues to it. So overall, I don't think as you go deeper into the card, every battle is 10 out of 10. It's missing the multiple impact pieces that I think leads up to something being event of the year. But like I said, the top heavy battles played out perfectly, and you still had something throughout the card to make it one of the best events of the year for me. I think it could be argued into the number 3 spot. I think most of you will, to be perfectly honest. But for me, at number 3, one spot ahead, is Gnome 14. And I'll tell you what, similar to Winter Madness in a sense, well, maybe not the exact same, Gnome 14 started out pretty rough. First 2 battles were rough. Your surprise battle is Swervo versus Franchise. That was ass. We're just going to call it what it is. And then you had Danny versus T-Top. And I thought T-Top was decent in the battle, but definitely another lackluster battle. So how do you start out with 2 lackluster battles? but still end up in the top 3, because I feel like after those 2 battles, the card doesn't get enough credit for the fact it had multiple good battles, obviously leading up into Lux versus Nitty, which is instant classic. In my opinion, pretty clearly the battle of the year. We'll have a list for that, but I've been vocal about that the whole time. That shouldn't be a shocker hearing from me. But then the card gets back on track leading up into the Lux and Nitty battle, because then you had Coffee Brown versus Jazz, which was the second most hyped up battle going in. It played out to being one of the best female battles of the year and the second most competitive battle on the card. So when it wasn't the co-main event, but for many people it could have been in terms of excitement, and I thought it played up to its potential. You had Tay-Rock versus Jerry West, which I feel like gets forgotten amongst some of Rock's battles this year, but it was a very good Rock, a pretty good Jerry as well. Heavy first from Jerry, signature Tay-Rock second. Then you still had Geechee versus Fonz, where you get a Geechee that pretty good. He didn't mail it in by any means like he did versus Loso or Marv, for example. I thought it was more in line with like his Miss Hustle performance, just a solid Geechee Gotti, versus a Fonz, who I thought really took advantage of the opportunity in those first 2 rounds. And you almost got somewhat of a signature Geechee third as well. So that's 3 good battles leading up into Lux versus Nitty. And don't get me wrong, Lux versus Nitty is doing most of the carrying here in the conversation, but when you have a battle of that magnitude, that's what it does. So for me, I have it right there at number 3. I think it has flaws the same way Winter Madness does. Both of them a bit top-heavy, like the exciting matches carried most of the excitement in terms of the results and how the card played out. But you can pretty much flip it any way you want. I think it's close. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I watched Gnome 14 in person. So it's always different energy in person. It's always a bit more memorable. But either way that you argue it, I think this is the 3 and 4. But for me, Gnome at 3, Winter Madness at 4. And then that leads you into the big debate. There really is no question what's 1 and 2, no matter how you split this up, and this is a very debatable topic, but it's either Massacre 6 for Event of the Year or Power Moves. And I know usually I just do it by the placements, but I kind of want to have a comparison debate here because that's what people have been having. It's 2 very different ways of finding yourself to a great event, right? Because with Massacre 6, you have the more battle rap festival approach, I call it. 2-day event, King of the Dot specialty, and you have a huge volume of battles to go off of. You have nearly 20 battles on the weekend compared to Power Moves, which I said earlier is a template I prefer. The 5-battle mega match card. It reminds you of the old SMs, the old Gnomes, where you have, I'm not going to say newcomers, but like mid-tiers or people that have had some momentum opening up the card. J2's dominant performance versus Snake Eyes, and then 4 straight top-tier action afterwards. And what I will say with Power Moves is that outside of 1 battle, there's really nothing competitive about this event. It is a lot of pretty dominant performances versus the others for the most part, but this just goes to show you can have that and still be one of the best events of the year. Obviously, Geechee and Hitman in the main event is the war, it's the fight, it's one of the best battles this year, one of the biggest battles this year, and then from there, Twerk versus Big K, dominant. It's all about Twerk, to the point that it's debatably the performance of the year from Twerk. It's debatably the best 3 rounds I saw from anyone in a battle this year. So you have someone that is up there maybe in the top 5 battles of the year, especially in terms of importance, and then you have possibly the performance of the year. So those are 2 heavy accolades to have on your card. Then you still have Av's performance versus A-Ward, heavy, dominant. You still have Swamp versus T-Rex, and this is the one battle that, even though it was still good, this is where all the complaints about the Atlanta crowd, I feel like it did objectively take away from the battle a bit. You know, another event I was in the building for, right? So it doesn't affect, even though the crowd was loud, I'm locked in, I had a good time with every battle, but for the footage, Swamp and Rex definitely took a step back. Even in the building, you could tell it was messing up their pace, specifically Rex, but you still get a good Swamp performance in W, in my opinion. Then you turn over to Massacre, right? And this is the thing. There's no question I feel like Power Moves was more impactful. It did better numbers, and that was a big part of the debate, right? Shout out to Boss. I saw that she was all talking about what the trailers did, the face-off numbers. It's about the raps. For me, you know, and if you want to add that, I can't go against that. I feel like both events were quite impactful, you know what I mean? But I'm not looking at YouTube numbers to determine that for me. I'm looking at the quality of the raps throughout. And I feel like Massacre 6 is a good example of battle rap festivals can work against you sometimes. The crowd's tired, people around for hours watching battles 2 days in a row. But they pulled it off well here, where you have dominant performances as well. Sharon versus 40 Bars, showcase performance. Real Sick versus Charlie Clips, showcase performance. T-Rex, New Jersey Twerk versus Past, not quite as good as the Twerk was versus Big K, but still the performance of the night in my opinion. Heavy, T-Rex versus Chilla Jones, probably a bit more competitive than people gave it credit for, but you still get a decent Chilla and a very good Rex performance that stole the show the first night. But you get a couple more fights in there as well. Obviously, you have Tay-Rock versus Big K, which while it doesn't match up quite Taguchi Gotti and Hitman, it's a grudge match, a very blockbuster match in its own right that kind of acts as this great main event for the entire weekend. But you still get battles like Frack versus John John, which is debatably better than that. Also top tier action and a great battle. You get A-Ward's performance versus Thesaurus, which was also another great, better A-Ward than you got on Power Moves to tack on there. You get Mike P versus Real Deal, solid battle, and it just kind of keeps adding up. Yoshi G versus Chirac. Chirac's great performance in there, even though Yoshi G was still good. It's just a volume thing. Even Clone versus Death the Kid, which is much lower in profile compared to these other battles, but one of the biggest, most dominant bodies of the year. Like, he made a spectacle out of Death the Kid. And for me, all that adds up to Massacre 6, in my opinion, being the event of the year for 2024. And I could see the debates both ways. It's another one like with Gnome and Winter Madness, where I don't think you can go wrong with either pick, but I thought it was impactful in its own right, no question. But at the end of the day, it had the same amount, if not more, dominant performances as Power Moves, while still having a couple more fights on the card. And that comes down to the volume, but it just goes to show, if I have twice, 3 times the amount of battles as you, but everyone still gives the effort, and there's no one like slacking off because it's such a big card, depending on what part of the night you're going in. Everyone treated it important, and when you have that many battlers on the card, especially battlers of this level, giving it their all, I just think the volume stacks up too much, which is why for me, I look at Massacre 6 as the best event that we got this year. But that is my full thoughts here, my full list for the top 5 events of the year here in 2024. And as always, but most specifically with these yearly wrap-up videos, I want to hear your guys' opinions in the comment section down below. What do you think was event of the year, first and foremost? I know that there's some pretty differing opinions. It's almost been 50-50 depending on who I ask what event of the year was. But what do you think event of the year was? Is there any in this top 5 that you'd switch around? Is there an event that you put on the top 5 that you think I personally forgot or underrated? Is there one that you would take off of the top 5 in your personal opinion? Re-rank the order. Any opinions, negative or positive? I want this to be about discussion, all these videos, so we can look back and realize it's been a very good year of wraps, you know what I'm saying? So I want to hear any of those opinions in the comment section down below, and I want to say really congrats to any league that got up here. Obviously, King of the Dot popping out with Massacre 6, and also you got to give credit to TBL, Takeover Battle League, ran by Chilla Jones as well, so he actually battled Rex, obviously, in one of the co-main events, but also helped put this entire thing together. So shout out Chilla, but everything King of the Dot and TBL did. Shout out Bags and Bodies for their first event being this major, and in many people's opinions could be event of the year. So no disrespect or discrediting to them. I edged the other event, but I think both of them are worthy of the conversation. And then obviously shout out to, you have other people that, a lot of battler thrown leagues this year, you know what I'm saying, that went off. John with Bullpen, even though we know how things ended, but that was kind of out of his hands. Calico with, Winter Madness in this case, but even Still Outside was a very good card as well. So he put on 2 great cards in the year. So shout out to the battlers that put their league owner hat on, and shout out to the leagues themselves, because I feel like even your URLs and your King of the Dots, which are already established, still was able to give us some good things to remember from 2024, man. But it's been J Smo Reviews again here, y'all. Please let me know, of course, all your comments on events of the year, top 5 events of the year, and please let me know what you might want next in terms of, top 5 battles, top 5 body bags. All of those are on the way and being made as we speak. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to catch you on the next one, man. Peace.